I'm not really sure how this video is going to go. I don't usually make videos, and when I do, they're not typically to such a wide audience as I hope to reach today. I'm typically just speaking to town of Midland residents, but today I want to talk to all of Ontario and maybe all of Canada and talk about legalization of marijuana. I'm currently at the AMO conference in Ottawa. I'm here as a representative for the town of Midland, as a councillor, and I've attended two different sessions on legalization of marijuana. One around youth specifically, and one around what municipalities should be doing to prepare ourselves for the inevitable legalization of marijuana. So it's an interesting topic, and it seems like the whole focus here in Ottawa is education and prevention for youth and keeping it out of the hands of young people. But the more I sit here and the more I listen to these conferences, the more I feel like the people making these decisions are so disconnected from youth and from cannabis users in general, because in this day and age, it's so easy to get your hands on marijuana. It's not, going behind the high school and finding the guy who looks like he's selling marijuana. Like mail order marijuana is bigger now than it's ever been, and it's a completely illegal market, but it's just it's functioning better than ever. It's growing. There's tens of mail order marijuana sites in Ontario. There's hundreds across Canada. Obviously tons in British Columbia, where they're famous for quality marijuana. And there has been talks about tightening up regulations and closing storefront dealers. And they talked about how it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I see that Ontario sees the potential for revenue here, but they're not even talking about mail order marijuana or how they're going to plan to combat mail order marijuana. I personally feel that they should work with mail order marijuana sites that are currently established, because these are people that have worked for tens of years on this craft, and growing marijuana is a craft, and there are so many different strains of marijuana for different uses, and these people know exactly what they're doing. And I think that the Ontario government, instead of turning a blind eye and thinking that you're going to have competitive pricing against companies that have been doing this for tens of years, finding out efficiencies, finding out better ways to do this, and don't have to pay tax on their product, it just seems crazy to me. I think thinking that Ontario is going to come out with our own product and hope that companies like Tweed can pull us forward, and that people aren't going to still rely on this mail order marijuana product it just shows me how disconnected Ottawa is from marijuana consumers in general. So it's a really tricky thing. Some things that I do, I think we're going to have huge challenges in terms of municipal politics is the 4 plants per residence. This is an interesting endeavor, and I think it's something that's very interesting that Ontario added to this bill. But there's very little regulations around who can grow, and I think that will come down to each municipality. Like we have some condominiums in Midland, as I'm sure most Ontario municipalities do. If we have 100 condos within a building, can each of the 100 residents have 4 plants each? Currently the answer is yes. So you can have 400 marijuana plants inside one condo building, and this will inevitably cause smell issues and maybe some heat, maybe it could be mold issues. So I think that that it was pretty ambitious for Ontario to put growing in the initial legalization, and they left edibles out because they figure that they can't get control on edibles, which it's an interesting thing. I understand edibles are a whole other animal, but the growth of marijuana is it's a bit of an art. To do it properly, you can't just start dropping seeds in soil and throwing a few planters around your house and hoping for the best. I think there's huge challenges around growing. Even townhouses, attached homes, when your neighbor's smoking a joint in their backyard, what can you do now? You can't call the police because they're legally entitled to smoke as much pot in their yard as they'd like to, and the fact that the smell is making its way to your yard, it's going to be very hard to govern, and something that's very hard to make a complaint about, and for something, and it's hard to enforce for police. Things like having 5 plants, like now our municipal law enforcement officers are going to have to respond to calls that maybe your neighbor has 5 plants. So how do they get right of access? And like, what's the return on investment for crashing a house with 5 plants and using our resources to remove plants from these residences? There's so many unanswered questions around this. So this is an interesting one. I really wish I could get more involved. After a 2-hour session today, there was no room for questions, which is frustrating to me. I'm hoping Jill Dunlop can hear this message, and some of our other elected officials can hear this message. Some of the questions that came from elected officials to the boards at the previous presentation I was at were around, they were concerned that their dog would eat a bud off a growing plant and overdose on marijuana. There was some interesting comments about secondhand smoke and people being impaired by secondhand smoke and then going out and driving and crashing their vehicle. Like, Ontario's talking about educating our residents. We really need to educate our elected officials because there's a huge disconnect between what Ontario knows about cannabis and municipal politicians know about cannabis and what the cannabis consuming population knows about cannabis. So I think there needs to be a better connection between the two. There needs to be better communication. The fact that there was no questions after the period today is troubling to me. They had 15 minutes of extra time and just allowed speakers a few more minutes to speak any extra thoughts that they thought they had missed, when that was a huge opportunity for us as municipal elected officials to have real questions and ask the people that are in charge of making these changes. So I have huge concerns around legalization of marijuana. I'm a supporter of it, but mail order marijuana, it's not something that I'm opposed to. I think in the current illegal market, it's a great tool for people that use cannabis. It's a great illegal tool for people that use cannabis to be able to pick what strain they use. They can order edibles, they can order oils, topicals, whatever they want to do. The problem is the Ontario government thinks that they're going to replicate this, have a controlled product under Ontario health regulations, and I think they're going to be able to stay competitive in the pricing market. And I physically think it's impossible. Hopefully the Ontario government proves me wrong. That's to be determined. I'd really like to get involved on this. If anybody's in the cannabis industry or has any pull in the legalization laws and stuff, obviously I'll have some hands in what goes on in Midland, but I'd like to be part of the bigger picture. So share this video, share your concerns around the legalization of cannabis, whether you're for it or against it. Like, I think we've still got a long ways to go in terms of growing the plants, and what are we going to do with the odors, and like just so many things. Like, are you going to be allowed to grow plants in a home with children? It just opens so many doors. So I think we need to keep the conversation going. I'm really happy that's being legalized. I support it. I really think that there's a long way to go here, and I think that the Ontario government really needs to be speaking with not even just the Ontario government, because a lot of these mail order marijuana sites are from other provinces. So the provincial government needs to be working with the federal government to either shut these down or get them licensed and get them on board and get them as legal marijuana sales shops for all of Canadians. I think this is a great change for Ontario. I think it's a great change for Canada. I hate that it's taken away the focus from opiates. I wish that the profit from this endeavor was more geared towards opiate reduction. Marijuana is used as a means to get off hard drugs. I know from personal experience. It's a great tool for so many things, and as someone who's been refused medical marijuana because of a past of recreational use, this is a great opportunity for people like myself to self-prescribe marijuana for your medical uses. My doctor delivered me, so that tells you how far in the past he is, and his marijuana opinions may be a little out of date, and so be it. So are a lot of the world, so are a lot of the country, and but I think education is so key, and I think this is time for Ontario to speak with the residents, the cannabis consuming residents, and we really need to educate our elected officials. This is a great opportunity, but it's also a great opportunity for failure. So please help me share this video, get my message out. We've got a long way to go. Please help me be part of the change. Thank you.